Hi everyone. In this video, we are going to review CSS positioning. So let's get started. With CSS positioning, there are a few values that we are concerned about. Let's talk about them. Position is the property, and the values that we are concerned with are relative, absolute, absolute, and fixed. With these three properties, we can do a lot. So let's take a look at the page. In this example, we have got a level 1 heading, we have got 3 paragraphs, and one of them has a class that we will use, and I will demonstrate all of these properties using that center paragraph. Okay, so first, let's talk about relative. Relative, well, let's just demonstrate it. So let's go ahead and write a CSS rule for the class MoveMe. And let's set its position to relative. When I refresh the page, nothing really happens. As you can see, everything is still the way that it was. But now let's just use one of the positioning properties. Let's set top to 50 pixels. Now look at that. Move Me just went down below that third paragraph. Now, one thing I do want you to note is that we have left the space. The space is still being taken up in the flow by the Move Me element that was there. So we have pushed it down, but there's still a hole there. Now I also want you to watch this too. So left 50 pixels. And see, we can actually push it. So relative just means let me adjust where I am located relative to where I was in the flow and still leave the hole open in flow that I was in. Let me demonstrate this a little bit better about where it is by using background color. And let's just use something easy to look at like purple. See? Now, if I remove this, see how it goes back to where it was before? Okay, so that is position relative. Now, the next one I wanted to look at was position absolute. If I set move me to position absolute with the properties that I set, let me refresh. Now, notice how the hole is gone in the document where it was before, and now it is just sitting out there, I would say about 50 pixels from the left and 50 pixels from the top. Absolute takes the element that's being positioned with absolute out of flow and puts it absolutely wherever. That is absolute positioning. Now, here's a different one. Absolute can also be used with relative. Let me show you how that works. So let's say that we have a div that is surrounding all of these paragraphs. Nothing's going to change yet. Let me give it a class of container. And let's do some stuff to it. So let's set container height 100 pixels, width 100 pixels, background color green. Okay, so there it is. But let me show you a trick. Move me is set to absolute. Let's increase this a little bit more. There we go. Now, if I set the container to a position of relative, now we're sitting at 50 pixels inside the container. 50 pixels from the top, 50 pixels from the left. Also, I am out of flow still, but this is a rule that's important. What will happen is that when you set a position of absolute, the browser will continue to go up until it finds the first relative position element, and it will position the absolute element in relation to that first relative positioned element, as you can see here. Now there's a couple of other properties that can make things kind of interesting. So we're using top. Let's set top to 0. Okay. Let's set right to 0. There. Now as you can see, we are 0 pixels from the right, but something odd. Let's inspect this. Ah, there we go. So, you would figure that we should be 0 pixels from the top since, well, I set it to top 0. But if we go look at the developer tools and we go look at Move Me, let's look at the computed. I've got a margin of 16 pixels. I can handle this pretty easily. Let's just set margin to 0. There we go. Now, this is kind of cool because I could set top right, I could set top left. It just goes wherever I tell it to go inside this element. Now, if you want to see something even cooler, watch this. So if I set top left and 0 and right to 0, watch what happens. In order for the browser to make these rules work, or these properties work, it actually expands it to fit the entire thing. So I could come over here and set a little bit of padding. There. Check that out. It's kind of cool. Okay, so last thing we're going to talk about. Let's talk about fixed positioning. So with fixed positioning, let's just set it. And I'm just going to set my top and left to 0. And there we go. So fixed will make sure that it's pulled out of flow and it is set to the viewport. So if I say top and left 0, it's going to be top and left 0 of the viewport itself. But let's kind of cause this to be pushed down a bit. All right, so I'm scrolling now, and as you can see, when I set fixed, it's always staying fixed. And this works even if I want to go with bottom. Oh yeah, so that other rule that I was talking about comes into play too. So if I set two rules that, the top and bottom of 0, it expanded it to fit. There we go. So as you can see now, it's on the bottom still. Okay, so that's pretty much it. Those are the 3 position values that I wanted to discuss. And there's a lot that you can do with this. So go out and have fun positioning your elements. Thanks again for listening.